Hi, everybody. I know we still have a few people logging on to join us, but I wanted to go ahead and get started by welcoming everybody to today's webinar, Take Control of Your Fleet's Fuel Usage, Getting Started with TrueFuel. I'm Mackenzie Tabor, and I'm here with our fuel experts, Lloyd Pallam and Ethan Sweeney, to talk about best practices for getting started with TrueFuel, and then running a successful fuel management program. For everyone who has made time in their busy day to be with us today, welcome and thanks for hanging out with us for the next hour. I wanted to let you know that this webinar will be recorded and sent to you within the next 24 hours, so don't worry if you get interrupted or have to jump off the call. You'll get the recording sent to your email address tomorrow so you can review at your convenience or share with anyone in your company who may want to learn more about TrueFuel. And towards the end, we're going to be wrapping up with a Q&A session, so feel free to submit your questions anytime throughout the presentation. You can do so using the text box under the questions section in your GoToWebinar panel. And with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to Lloyd and Ethan and let them get this show on the road. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon. My name is Ethan Sweeney. I'm on the customer side of the house here over on the TrueFuel team at Tenstreet and joined by my colleague Lloyd. Excited to share some more information about TrueFuel with you. If you do have questions, go ahead and put them into the questions box here. We will absolutely make time to get those asked and answered. And for anything that requires additional follow-up, we'll make sure to connect with you after the call. So for today's presentation here, I wanted to set the stage by talking about the challenges that fleets face when it comes to fuel, and then start to unpack the solution to those challenges, the Tenstreet TrueFuel solution. I also wanted to make time to share from my experience some of the best practices that I've seen for using TrueFuel and a fuel program to reduce fuel consumption from the past 10 years that I have been working with fleets and TrueFuel. And then I'll share some samples of successful programs that our clients have created, deployed, and successfully managed with TrueFuel. So let's go ahead and jump in here. So I find it's helpful to look at the trend in fuel prices for the past handful of years to see what we can learn. So looking at the past 48 months, what I'm taking away from this data is prices are high. They're higher than they've been in the past, and there's a lot of volatility, meaning a lot of price fluctuation over the past couple of years. And to me, this shows the importance of using technology like TrueFuel, developing and executing a fuel program intended to reduce fleet fuel consumption and thereby reduce fuel costs. Now, adding to this challenge, even in modern trucks with the latest and greatest engines and drivetrains, driver behaviors can still impact the amount of fuel that a truck consumes by up to 30%. Think of driver behaviors like idling, acceleration, excessive speeding, and speed consistency, maintaining speeds once we're up and cruising. These behaviors are how drivers can have such a significant impact on fuel consumption. And there's a number of additional variables that will impact how much fuel a truck consumes that are outside of the driver's control. Everything that's on this slide right here has an impact on the amount of fuel that a truck consumes and thereby impacts MPG. So historically, fleets have only had MPG as a fuel performance metric, but from a driver's performance standpoint, that is an unfair metric for assessing the driver's fuel performance because things like weather, terrain, trailer type, load weight, route, traffic, truck spec, and vintage, all of these variables have a heavy impact in fuel consumption, but the driver can't control any of these. And so using MPG to assess a driver's fuel performance really creates some challenges. And what ends up happening is that a lot of drivers just don't buy into a fuel program. that's based on MPG. So that's where True Fuel comes in. True Fuel was thoughtfully designed to help fleets reduce their fuel consumption by improving driver fuel behaviors. And True Fuel is unique in that it only focuses on what the drivers can control, their behaviors as it pertains to fuel consumption. And True Fuel is able to quantify the driver's impact in gallons. So fleets know how much fuel is being wasted and where to go about recovering it in their operations. So today, True Fuel focuses on the 4 driver behaviors that have the biggest impact on fuel consumption. And not only do the first 3 behaviors that I'm going to talk about affect fuel, but they also play a heavy role in a fleet's safety program as well. So starting out on the left-hand side here, let's talk about acceleration. How fuel efficiently are your drivers accelerating? Think about starting from a stop. Are they mashing on the throttle to get up to speed as quickly as possible? Or are they gradually accelerating, letting the truck's engine use all the power it has to provide to get the load up and moving? Next, speed consistency. When a driver is at cruising speed, are they anticipating traffic and gradually decelerating, gradually accelerating to conserve their momentum and maintain those speeds? Or are they jumping on the binders as soon as they get into traffic and then mashing on the throttle to get back up to speed again? Speeding is the driver maintaining speeds at or below the company's speed policy, or are they hitting and achieving unsafe and wasteful top speeds on the highway? And finally, when the driver is not using the truck for work, are they turning the truck off, or are they letting the truck sit there running when it's not being used for work and consuming more fuel? From my experience, idling is the most common areas. Fleets know that they're wasting fuel, but don't have the tools to accurately, effectively, and efficiently go about reducing fuel due to idling. There we go. So with True Fuel's unique ability to isolate and quantify the driver's impact on fuel consumption, it helps solve a really common problem that fleets have when they're trying to assess driver fuel performance. So really common story here in fleets is that we're going to see varied operations. We have different drivers running different routes to different clients, hauling different weights, running different trucks. And as I mentioned, historically, only having MPG isn't setting a fleet up or a driver up for success when it comes to assessing fuel performance, because of all the variables outside of the driver's control impacting MPG. So that's where True Fuel comes in and is able to provide a fair metric to assess a driver's fuel performance. So previously, using MPG, looking at these 2 drivers, we would think that driver 1 is the more fuel efficient driver because they have the higher MPG. But driver 1 is actually set up for more success as it pertains to MPG because they spend more time on the highway. They're mostly OTR work. They get up to speed and then just stay there for the majority of the day. And even though they haul a heavy load, they're pretty much just maintaining highway speeds throughout the entire day. And so driver 1 here has a 7.5 MPG compared to driver 2, whose job requires him to drive on highway and in city. We're going to be doing a lot of P&D, a lot of pickup and delivery, and so we're going to be running into a lot of traffic when we're in the city. We're going to be running into traffic on the highway, and so driver 2, his actual MPG is only 6.4. So looking at these 2, using MPG as a fuel performance metric, we would believe that driver 1 is the better driver with respect to fuel. But with True Fuel's ability to isolate and quantify the driver's behavior and its impact on fuel consumption and provide a measured fuel efficiency metric, we can see that driver 2 actually is the more performant driver. So using the true fuel efficiency metric on a 100% scale, driver 2 has a 98% efficiency, meaning of all the fuel driver 2 consumed, only 2% of that fuel was being wasted due to inefficient practices. Whereas driver 1, 9% of the fuel that driver 1 consumed while operating the truck was wasted due to inefficient practices. So I hope this helps illustrate the benefits of using efficiency and TrueFuel's unique ability to monitor just the driver behaviors that impact fuel efficiency and provide this performance metric to fleets and to drivers. Having a metric like this, and we'll go into a little bit more detail here shortly, but having a metric like this for a fuel program or an incentive program or even just a driver coaching program really goes a long way with getting drivers to buy into the program, because this metric, the driver has complete control over the inputs that create this metric. Okay, so what is a real world impact of using True Fuel? I've worked with fleets who have implemented a successful True Fuel program and reduced their fuel spend by as much as 10%. Meaning, to put it into perspective, if you look at how much fuel your fleet has purchased in the last 12 months, now reduce that by 10%. That's going to be a significant number. And on top of the financial savings, there's additional soft benefits too. More fuel efficient drivers are going to be safer drivers because they're paying more and better attention to their environment, the traffic around them, and their driving practices. So you'll see an inherent improvement in safety from drivers that have a True Fuel coaching program. Also, a more fuel efficient driver is going to be easier on the truck, which will result in reduced maintenance costs from less wear and tear. And like I mentioned, because True Fuel's efficiency performance metric is fair, drivers are going to be more engaged with you in the fleet and more motivated, because they're no longer being assessed by MPG, but they're being assessed on their actual driving behaviors and performance. And growing more and more important in the industry are green initiatives. Reducing fuel consumption will inherently produce less CO2. And because True Fuels has the ability to quantify the amount of fuel that is being wasted, and thereby also have the ability to quantify the amount of fuel being saved, fleets are now in a position to enhance their ESG reporting with a quantified carbon reduction. Can actually quantify the amount of CO2 a fleet is reduced by improving their fuel performance. Okay, so let's operationalize everything that we've discussed so far. True Fuel, again, was thoughtfully designed to make a significant impact without requiring a lot of time and effort. And Tenstreet actually offers 3 different tiers of True Fuel, enabling fleets to start reducing fuel consumption no matter the size of your fleet or your tech stack. So starting out on the left-hand side here with the bronze tier. The bronze tier is going to use location data from the Tenstreet Driver Pulse mobile app. And it's going to provide you on the fleet side with an aggregate view across your fleet, showing how much fuel is being wasted, and give some insight into how to go after it with respect to acceleration, again, that 0 to 60, and then also with speeding. Now here, we're going to be able to see at a fleet-wide view, fuel opportunity that's on the table. And inside the Tenstreet Driver Pulse app, which I have a screen cap of here in just a couple of slides, drivers are going to be able to see their performance and be able to start taking action towards improving. Now, the bronze tier is free and is available to everybody on the call here. So if you don't yet see it in your Tenstreet dashboard, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My contact info will be at the end of the presentation here, or reach out to your AM and we'll get that turned on for you. Okay, the silver tier in the middle. Silver tier is also going to use location data from Tenstreet's Driver Pulse mobile app. But the benefit with silver is that it's going to provide visibility into individual driver performance. So now, instead of just a fleet aggregate view, we can see how individual drivers are performing with respect to fuel. And another really cool benefit here with the silver tier is that it's also integrated with Tenstreet's automated fuel incentive feature called rewards. So if you're interested in or already have a fuel incentive program but want to revamp it, the Tenstreet reward system is fully automated. You set it up in coordination with your account manager or with your True Fuel project manager, and then it'll run automatically at whatever cadence we set up. So really cool feature to save a lot of time and effort here. All right, next, the gold tier. Now the gold tier is the premier level, and it's going to be pulling the data from integrated telematics partners. Now with the gold tier, since it's pulling data from the telematics partners, we're actually going to get more visibility into driver behaviors, specifically with idling. Now, because we're getting data from the telematics system, we can actually start unpacking and digging into idling behaviors with actionable information. And with the gold tier, we're going to have tools inside of Driver Pulse and the Express portal that we'll show here in just a little bit. They're going to help make taking action to reduce fuel waste significantly easier. Okay, so I put this slide together. So like I mentioned, I've been working with fleets and True Fuel for the past 10 years, a little bit more probably at this point. And I've been working with fleets ranging in size from 4 trucks up to over 8,000. And what I've learned over the past 10 years, in order to design, develop, execute, and manage a successful fuel program, it has to have or answer these needs. And so as we walk through this list, I've broken it down into what works for fleets on the left, what works for drivers on the right. As we walk down this list, you're going to notice that there's a lot of similarities between the two, what works for fleets and what works for drivers. And Tenstreet True Fuel also has a number of tools that'll help efficiently fill these needs, which is really, really cool. So let's start at the top here. The top section on both sides is going to be talking about the tech needs. So for both drivers and fleets, for a successful fuel program, we need a fair metric. Without a fair metric, drivers just aren't going to buy into the program. You run the risk of incentivizing or coaching the wrong driver, like in the example I showed just a few slides ago. So the need for a fair metric really, really does benefit both the fleet and the driver. As soon as you center up on a fair metric like the True Fuel efficiency metric, it will it'll show the drivers that, hey, any change I make to my driving behavior will be reflected in this performance metric. So having that is going to help them buy into the program. Okay. And on the fleet side, you will have the confidence to know that you're incentivizing or coaching the correct drivers with a fair metric. Next, again, on both lists, the ability to quantify the impact. Now, on the fleet side, quantifying the impact has the benefits of showing you how much opportunity is on the table and where. So now you know how much we have to go after and where to go after it. Here, this is going to make a tremendous impact because fuel programs like this are expected to have an ROI, right? And so having the ability to quantify is going to help for tracking and communicating your performance against that expected ROI. Now, additionally, this will help you track how much funds you're saving. So then you can start to make business decisions about, okay, where should those funds go? Is it going to be into a fuel incentive program? Is it going to go into speccing new trucks? Is it going to go into increasing benefits for the program or other areas of the business? Having the ability to quantify is going to help you know how much money is going to be coming back as part of your program. Now, on the driver side, the ability to quantify the impact is going to go a long way with coaching. So if Lloyd came to me and said, hey, Ethan, over the past week, you've lost 100 gallons due to idling, that is really going to resonate with me, as opposed to Lloyd coming to me and just saying, hey, Ethan, I need you to work on your idling. It's too much. Quantifying the impact and telling the driver this in gallons is the result of this behavior helps drive home the importance to the driver and helps them understand the impact that their behaviors are going to have on the fuel program. It's also going to help in the communication to the drivers later on as we're managing our program about this is how much fuel you have helped us save compared to your peers. So we've got the coaching piece of it, but then also the recognition piece of it. Okay, on both lists, we're going to talk about automation here. So with automation for the fleet side, think of things like automated reporting, ways to automate coaching or pushing training directly to the drivers. The benefits for the fleet with automation are going to come in the world of saving time and effort and being consistent. With True Fuel, there's automated coaching that goes out to the drivers. There's automated training collateral that can go out to the drivers. There's also ways to schedule automated notifications through the Express portal. So that way we're sending either communications out saying, hey, this is our performance over the past week, or we can also schedule automated surveys, for example, to say, hey, how is our fuel program going? What can we do better to help you guys succeed? For the drivers, the automated coaching piece is going to be critical from a consistency standpoint. The coaching to the driver cannot be subjective. It has to be objective and consistent. So the more consistent that a coaching can get to the driver and as close to real time as possible, the better that driver is going to be set up for success. This way, they're getting unbiased feedback about their performance, using quantified fuel waste to say, hey, this is where you have the biggest opportunity for improvement. And it's going to help the driver in understanding that if I make these changes in my behaviors, the system is going to reflect it, and it's going to be fairly represent the work that I'm doing to improve. Okay. Now, the last piece on the tech needs for the driver's side is going to be the tools to master. Like I mentioned, with the quantifying. So if I'm a driver and Lloyd's my trainer, and Lloyd gives me not only quantified fuel waste, but also the tools that I need to be able to self-serve my own performance data at my own cadence, so that when Lloyd and I have our secondary coaching conversations, either once a week, or if I don't hit a certain target performance metric, I will have the ability to go into those conversations knowing full well what Lloyd and I are going to talk about. That also enables me to then ask questions and say, hey, I know that my acceleration behavior has been a bit off this past week. I'm running into these, hurdles that I just can't figure out how to improve. Giving the driver the tools to match to the program is going to set them up for success and enable them to, even outside of the secondary coaching conversations, successfully go about changing their behaviors to improve their fuel performance. Okay. On the SMART goal, on the second section here, right in the middle, we're going to start talking about program needs. So as we're starting to design and develop our program, I always recommend that we think of SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. The benefit to using SMART goals as we're developing our fuel program is that once we have an idea of this is what we as a fleet are trying to accomplish, here are the milestones that we're looking to achieve in a set amount of time, we now have an entire program structure that we can then clearly communicate out to all of the players in the program. So that way we can clearly set expectations to everybody that's going to be involved in the program and say, hey, this is what we're striving towards. This is what we need from you in order to achieve these goals that we have as an organization. The benefit here is also internally. Let's say if you have to work with the executive team, the accounting team, the HR team to get approval on or feedback on a program as you're developing it, having these goals lined up and defined and documented is going to help in those communications as well. Okay, same thing with identifying players. As you're thinking about the structure of your program, plan to identify everybody that's going to be involved in the program. I just mentioned the accounting team and HR. For your fuel program, do we need to, for example, get approval from the accounting team for an incentive program? Or do we need to get approval from the HR department for a secondary coaching program? As you're structuring your program, make sure to identify everybody that's going to be involved. So that way we can pull them into the conversation, clearly set their expectations, get their buy-in to the program, and then keep them involved along the way. Okay, now identifying the players is also going to help the drivers in the program training side, because as we're training our drivers, we can clearly set their expectations early and consistently of here's everybody that's going to be involved. Here are the teams as they line up. So for example, if we're going to have a secondary coaching program, here are the driver trainers that you're going to be working with. So that way, when we're setting their expectations early, they're not going to be surprised by anything throughout our program. Now, going back to the fleet side, everything that we're going to talk about in the next 3 bullets here is also going to help out on the driver side. So what is the plan for coaching? Are we planning to just coach the bottom 10% of drivers, or are we going to be coaching all drivers based on their opportunities for improvement? Who is going to be performing the coaching and at what cadence? Having a planned and defined and documented strategy for a secondary coaching program is going to help in the training efforts internally with the driver trainers, but then also, again, setting expectations for those drivers. Now, with the secondary coaching piece, what I've found to be the most beneficial is enabling the drivers to self-serve their own performance data, but then have a secondary coaching program in place. All the fleets that I worked with that have a successful program have a secondary coaching process in place. And the benefits here are that we're not only coaching the drivers on how they can improve using their own performance data, but we can also create a feedback loop in these conversations so that if and when drivers have questions about how they can improve and they're just not able to fully wrap their head around how to change this for specific behavior, or let's say they run into an issue out in the field and it's causing them to have to idle or speed in their eyes, anything that may be impacting their fuel performance, having a secondary coaching plan in place is going to set up a feedback loop where the drivers can connect with their managers to get their questions asked and answered. One thing that I found with initial training is that the majority of the drivers are going to be paying attention to the initial training, but you're also going to have some that just are distracted or are unable to attend the initial training. So this secondary coaching system also provides an opportunity to revisit that training on the program at a regular cadence. What I've found to be the most successful in working with fleets, depending on the size, but focusing up on the drivers with the lowest efficiency score, because they have the biggest opportunity for improvement and thereby can create the most savings at a weekly cadence. Now, the automated coaching is going to be informing the drivers at a regular cadence of how they can improve, but this secondary coaching at a weekly cadence of the bottom performing drivers goes a long way in driving home the importance of the program creating the feedback loop so drivers can get questions asked and answered. And then also it sets sort of expectations in those coaching conversations. You can say, hey, next week I'd love to connect and talk about, this, trying to have you achieve this goal, reduce your idle time by X amount of hours, or whatever that metric may be. So having those secondary coaching conversations really does go a long way in your program. Okay, a plan for recognition. So with the fuel program, I have found that it's always helpful to not only have coaching for the bottom performers, but give something for the drivers to strive to. Whether it's a fuel incentive program where the drivers may get a cash bonus if they achieve a certain performance metric, or if they're in the top 3 or top 5, or if it's simply as easy as amplifying the top performing driver successes. I've worked with clients whose recognition plan was sending out in a monthly newsletter to the entire organization. Here are the top performing drivers. Here is the most improved driver. Anything to shine a spotlight on successes of drivers is a great method of recognition. Another tactic here that I found helpful is in surveying drivers to get an understanding of what's important to them. You know your drivers, you have a relationship with them, so you may be able to answer this. But in the event that, it's a large organization and there's a lot of drivers that are out on the road, so you're unable to connect with people that often, consider surveying your drivers to see what is important to you from a recognition piece. What is going to get you to buy in? Now, it doesn't have to be an open-ended form that says, hey, tell me anything that you want and we'll make it happen. But consider maybe ranking these 3 or 5 items in a recognition piece and getting that feedback from the drivers, telling, hey, drivers, tell me out of these 3 or 5 items, which is most important to you. That way, your drivers are going to be striving towards something that's important to them. I mentioned that Tenstreet has an automated fuel incentive program. That's really, really cool. It's integrated with True Fuel data, and it provides drivers the ability right in Driver Pulse to redeem their own points that they've achieved for gift cards to national, organizations like Lowe's, DoorDash, Cabela's, big stores across the country that drivers can go in and essentially choose whatever they want to redeem it for. And so that's a really cool piece for a recognition program to consider as well. Okay, on the ROI side, so I mentioned True Fuel provides the ability to quantify the amount of fuel that drivers are wasting, thereby giving us the ability to track how much fuel we are saving as part of our program. So as you're developing a program, plan to have tools in place to track ROI. So that way you can communicate it internally and communicate it out to the drivers as well. And then amplification of success. Like I mentioned, recognition can be as easy as notifying drivers of their peers that are in the top 10. Also consider doing what one of our clients has done in the past, where they actually they have a big family following of the company's Facebook page. And so on the company's Facebook page, they were amplifying the success of their top performing drivers with respect to their True Fuel scores. So their families at home could very quickly and easily start to celebrate the achievements of their family with them. That was a really cool piece. So whether it be on social media, company newsletter, or even just in person, going up to the driver and saying, hey, thanks, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. This is phenomenal. Amplification of success goes a long way in getting drivers to buy in. Okay, and the last piece that I want to talk about here for a program is going to be the communication piece. The biggest pitfall that I've seen when it comes to running a fuel program is when there's lacks or breaks in communication. If you have a lack of communication, your drivers may be in situations where they just don't understand the program. They don't understand how they can help. They don't understand how to change their behaviors to be successful. Similarly, with drivers, they benefit from having a communication feedback loop with the management team so that they can not only learn from the management side and the tools that the management has, how can they improve, but also give some insider info into, this trip that I'm on, this route that I'm on, I keep running into this challenge. Having a feedback loop with somebody else in the fleet is going to help overcome those communication obstacles that the drivers may have. Okay. So I wanted to showcase, I mentioned the True Fuel scoring the True Fuel tools that the driver has access to self-serve their own performance data. So what we have on the left-hand side here is a screenshot of the driver's view of their True Fuel score in the driver Pulse app. So here, drivers quickly can self-serve their own performance data to answer questions like, how am I doing? Where can I improve? And how to improve? And immediately below that information is with the gold tier, with the True Fuel scorecard, immediately at the bottom there is training modules that are canned for each driver behavior. So now if a driver looks at their scorecard and says, okay, acceleration is my biggest opportunity for improvement, immediately below that is a training module for each of the driver behaviors so they can self-serve not only their own performance data, but also training to help them improve. With the gold tier, there's also automated notifications sent to drivers that encourage them to engage with their driver data and training. Now, on the right-hand side here, this is for the management. So this is a screenshot of the True Fuel dashboard inside of Express, where managers can data mine their driver and fleet performance using the reporting tools to quickly identify who needs coaching and who needs praising. Another benefit here with True Fuel Express is that there's very efficient and effective communication tools that we have access to. So for example, if you're unable to connect with a driver in person, directly from the Express, you can coordinate either a message into the driver Pulse app or a call or a video call directly with the driver. Next, I'm going to talk about, on the next slide, company-wide communication. There's tools inside of Express that enable you to efficiently communicate to all of your hired drivers, which is a great resource for amplifying those driver success stories and saying, hey, here's the top 10, reminding all of the drivers what the goals are of the program, or just executing monthly or quarterly program status updates to everybody in the field. That tool is called Broadcast. And also inside of Express, I mentioned that it's important to survey drivers. There's a tool called Fleet Check where you can survey drivers. It's a quick 2-question survey that says, on a scale of 1 to 5, how is our fuel program going? And then the next one is, what can we do better to help you be successful with the fuel program? So having the data for the back office inside of Express tied to all of these tools really goes a long way in helping a fleet manage a fuel program. Okay. Now, before we jump to the next slide here, I want to mention that all of the data that drivers see inside of the Express portal and that managers see that drivers see inside of Pulse and that managers see inside of the Express portal is available for an integration with your BI reporting tools. For example, Power BI or Tableau. All the data is available for a quick integration so that you can pull this True Fuel data into your existing BI reporting tool and use that to help customize any type of reporting, push it out to specific people at a regular cadence. Anything that you want to do with your Power BI reporting tools can be done with an integration with TrueFuel. There we go. Okay. So I thought it would also be helpful to share a fuel program roadmap that I built from my experience working with fleets on fuel programs. The first thing that I always recommend is to enable the software silently. Let's do everything that we need to do in order to get all of the data flowing before we kick off our program. This way, we're making sure that when we go live with the program, everybody is set up for success. We have data from all the drivers we need it from. The managers have access to the tools that they need. And also, this will start to give us the ability to prep what we expect to achieve with our goals. Having what I call baseline data, or uncoached data of our drivers' performance before we kick off our program, gives us a great foundation by which we can judge the success of our program as it goes on in time. Okay, so enabling the software for all of our drivers and all of our managers is a critical first step. Now, next is we need to define and then create all of the training collateral that is going to be needed for our program. So jumping back to our best practices, what works for fleets and what works for drivers, identifying the entire project team will set us up to be able to define what training collateral is needed. Once we have that defined, we can also start to shape what that training program is going to look like, so that when we take the next step and start to communicate out company-wide, we will be able to clearly set expectations of the training program that we have planned. Now, the communication piece, I always recommend that we communicate company-wide our entire plan for the program. Start out by talking about this is the tool that we're going to be using. Here's why we're going about it. This is the problem that we're trying to solve. And here's the goal that we have in mind. Adding to that, here's everybody that's going to be involved, and here's what's expected from this program. That communication going out company-wide informs everybody that's going to be involved. It also lets folks know the importance of the program. By sending it out to everybody on the team and everybody in the organization, we can start the conversations rolling. And this way it also creates dialogue about the fuel program inside the fleet. Next, the training. So once we've had our company-wide communication go out there, we're ready to train up our drivers and trainers. Now, I typically recommend that we take a train the trainer style approach. The benefit here is if we train our driver trainers first, we're then creating subject matter experts in the field who know everything about the program and are thereby able to help support driver questions and driver trainings. So instead of just one person being the project owner and training all of the drivers themselves, we're now creating multiple driver trainers that are going to be engaged with the program and multiple subject matter experts. So we're passing what we call the lottery test. And having more people being able to answer questions is going to create a larger network of resources that drivers can go to get their questions asked and answered. So now our feedback loop is bigger. And then having those driver trainers execute the training program for those drivers. They're clearly setting their expectations. They're educating them on how to use the tools that are provided. And they're also showing them that, hey, we're invested in this program. I'm here for you. Let me know what I can do to help you. Okay. Now, once we've kicked off our program and completed our training, the next piece is going to be to manage. And so this ties back to, again, that what works for fleet side, that smart goal setting. So when we're in the management phase, Now is when we get back into our SMART goals. We're going to look at what is the first milestone and goal and deadline that we want to achieve. And we're working to achieve that. Before we get there, we're going to review the data and see, okay, did we hit the mark? Yes or no? If yes, great. Let's start to communicate out what the next goal is and how we're going to get there. If we haven't, why haven't we? Let's look at and see, do we need to potentially change our program? Do we need to change our coaching? Do we need to communicate out more frequently to drivers? Having those SMART goals with those planned milestones and dates set you up to be able to go after the goals at a reasonable cadence and measure whether you're on track of hitting them. Okay, so I know I've shared a whole lot of stuff, but I wanted to share some examples of the successes that clients have had by taking the tools from TrueFuel, the tools from Tenstreet, and these best practices for designing and onboarding a program, and show this client example here because it's as plain as day. The efforts that this client put forth to designing, developing, and executing their program had a significant impact. So now the blue line is going to be their efficiency. And their efficiency is again on that 100% scale. And the inverse is how much fuel is being wasted. Now we can see the red line is the fuel being wasted. As the efficiency goes up, the fuel waste is directly tied to it and drops significantly. This fleet started taking action right at the new year and saw a tremendous improvement in the first quarter. And now in the second quarter, we are planning to go into Q3 and achieve even more by reshaping our program just a little bit here. Now, I wanted to wrap things up really quickly with some example customer success stories that have not only used TrueFuel to coach their drivers, but also identify ways to save a significant amount of fuel. So starting on the left-hand side here, enterprise size fleet, 2,000 plus trucks, very mixed operations. Their goal was to reduce their fleet fuel consumption. And so they took two tactics. One was to identify trucks without speed governors and correct them. So using TrueFuel, they identified trucks that had, drivers that had speeding fuel loss, and got those trucks routed in for maintenance so that they could get this governor's reset. It happens sometimes, just the governor, gets taken off by accident as part of routine maintenance. Having the tools to identify these trucks made a significant impact in that it helped them reduce their fuel waste to speeding and also increase their safety by getting those trucks governed up again. The second tactic they took was to identify and coach drivers to improve their fuel efficiency behaviors. So far in about a year, this fleet has reduced their fuel consumption by 40,000 gallons and saved over 500 tons of CO2. It's a really, really great program. The second one here is 1,000 truck fleet. Mix of OTR, regional, and local. They have a mix of different types of trucks. Their goal was to identify how much fuel is on the table for us to recoup with respect to driver behavior. And also they wanted to go about reducing their idle time and thereby reduce their idle fuel waste. So by using the data from TrueFuel, they were at the gold level. They are at the gold level. They were able to dig into their idling behaviors, divvy it up by terminal, coach drivers. For them, it was not only coaching on reducing idle, but educating drivers on the alternative idle technology that they have. And in doing so, reduce their idle time by 1,800 hours per week. That's really significant. That was a really cool success story. The last one I wanted to share here is a 170 plus truck fleet, OTR regional and local. They wanted to not only reduce their fleet fuel consumption, but revamp a driver fuel incentive program. So they took a couple different approaches. They identified which trucks were best suited for which routes. For example, they have trucks that are spec'd for OTR that come with cab heaters, for example, so drivers don't have to idle when it's cold. And then they also just have local day cabs. And so they were able to go through and identify the fuel performance of each of these, reroute them accordingly to make sure they were on the correct routes, and save fuel by putting the properly dedicated assets onto the correct routes. They also went about in creating a really progressive driver incentive program. The key takeaways here is that they centered up on the true fuel efficiency metric because they have varied operations, varied routes, varied truck types. They centered up on the efficiency metric, making it fair across their entire drivers. And they took a tiered approach, which was really cool. So they made it approachable to everybody by having a few different goals and a few different benefits for achieving each goal. So even if you're in the bottom performing drivers, they made a tier that is achievable for you to strive for. And then the next tier for you to continue on your improvement, think A, B, and C sort of level categories. In doing so, it created a stair-step process for all of their drivers, no matter their performance when they started the program, to be able to strive and achieve a goal by making them tiered and achievable. In doing so, saved over 140,000 gallons of fuel and over 2,000 tons of CO2 reduced in the process. Okay, so quick recap. Fuel is a top 3 concern per a recent ATRI study, and driver behavior can have a significant impact. A successful program, however, can have a tremendous impact. And True Fuel provides a lot of tools that are going to make your drivers successful and also enable you to answer important business questions around your fleet and your driver performance. A lot of the necessities of a successful program for the fleet are also going to benefit the driver. For example, again, we need a fair metric, the ability to quantify impact, automation, and providing drivers all the tools that they need to be successful. Okay, I've talked a whole lot here. I appreciate y'all bearing with me. Mackenzie, were there any questions that came through? Anything
Yeah,
that
we actually had one. You can hear me good, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so could we possibly go back to the slide with the comparison of the two different drivers' miles per gallon?
Sure.
When we get there, I think there's just a little bit of a confusion in the chat about how a driver with a 6.4 mile per gallon tank could be more efficient than one with a 7.4 miles per gallon efficiency
Sure.
with the same fuel tank capacity. Is there any way you could explain the difference uh, with the True Fuel tracks again?
Yeah, of course. Happy to help. So in this example, we're looking at these two drivers that have very different job types. The driver on the left here, if we were to stick with using MPG as a driver performance metric, driver number 1 would appear to be our best driver out of these two. But with True Fuel's ability to isolate and quantify the impact of these drivers' behaviors on how much fuel their truck consumes, we can actually see that driver number 2 is a more fuel performant driver. They're wasting less fuel due to their behavior and their operation of the truck than driver number 1. Was that helpful?
Yeah, I think so. We had a couple of other questions in the chat too. We did also have someone say they were super interested and we're going to reach out to their account manager, so that's exciting.
Awesome.
We had someone talk about, I know this is probably a pretty hard question to ask without knowing what their goals are and things like that, but someone did ask what is the ROI? So maybe if you could kind of dig into how you determine that per company and things like that.
Sure, sure, yeah. So typically what we see from fleets is fleets are achieving a 3 to 10% reduction in their fuel consumption. And when I say reduction in their fuel consumption, I mean, think of your annual fuel spend. How much fuel did you purchase in the last 12 months? And then what is 3 to 10% of that? That's how much fuel fleets are saving with True Fuel. From a perspective of ROI, that I want to make sure that I answer that because that's different than what I just shared. So on the ROI piece, we're seeing with True Fuel, and Lloyd, correct me if I'm wrong here, in the tune of 4 to 5x return on
Yeah.
the
Yep.
investment in True Fuel. Does that sound?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for every dollar that fleets invest in True Fuel, the return's usually 3 to 5. So you're right. You're right with that range,
Perfect. Thank you.
which is healthy, right? There's not many pieces of software being offered to fleets that provide that level of return
Right.
because fuel is so expensive and prevalent, right? It hits right in the right spot.
Yep.
Awesome. And then I think this one is a two-parters. It's from the same person, so I'll just ask both. They want to know how many trucks do I need for this to make sense? And then if they were to start tomorrow, how long before they see results?
Wow, really cool question. So I have personally worked with fleets that range in size from 4 trucks in the fleet up to 8,000. Any truck with drivers has opportunity to use True Fuel and see a benefit from it. We are seeing, we have a client that just started up within the past month and started seeing benefits from True Fuel immediately after their drivers were trained and using the system. For example, within the first 2 weeks, this new client had reduced their fuel spend by 2% already. So on a great track to show significant savings, and they're doing it really, really quickly. The cool thing about with the software approach is that as soon as the software is enabled and drivers are trained up, we're going to start seeing benefits and results.
Awesome. And then I see we're running out of time, but we do have one last question, and it is True Fuel standard on the Tenstreet platform? I looked in tools and could not find a card for it. If not, how do I get to review it, and what is the cost?
Very cool. Okay, so the bronze tier of True Fuel, I'm going to jump back to that slide while I got everybody. So the bronze tier is free. And so if it's not in your tools menu, you can either reach out to me. I'll put my my contact info up here at the end, or reach out to your account manager. They'll be the ones actually doing the work to get it added, and we can start setting you up with the bronze tier immediately.
Awesome. Well, I think that is all the questions we have. Ethan or Lloyd, did you have any final remarks, or do you want to put your contact information up one more time?
Yes, I do. Thank you for the reminder there. I just want to say thanks everybody for joining me. Thanks for the questions. If you do have any other questions after this, don't hesitate to reach out. Lloyd, anything else that you wanted to add here?
Nope. Nice job. Nice overview.
Cool.
Happy to have everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Molly and Mackenzie, for putting this on.
Yes, thank you guys for joining us, and thank you all for taking your time. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And as a reminder, you will get this recording about 24 hours from now. Have a great rest of y'all's day.
Thank you.